Hey ChatGPT, can you build me a gaming computer for $600? So one of the most common questions I get without a doubt is, Ozzy, what is the best computer I can build for X amount of dollars? I think the only question that might be asked more is, can I have a free PC? And unfortunately, ChatGPT cannot help you there. I've tried. So the question here is, how is ChatGPT when it comes to build requests, recommendations, questions, and can I just point people towards it when they ask me this type of question? Let's start with a simple PC build recommendation. This is a $600 computer that ChatGPT recommended me. And at first glance, looks totally fine. It has a Ryzen CPU, a modern dedicated video card, an SSD, and everything is compatible. Now, if I had $600, this is probably the computer that I would recommend. Now, you could spend less on the video card and more on the processor to make a more balanced build, but for the most part, this is the ballpark estimate. So I built the ChatGPT computer to see how well it did, and it was totally fine. The computer itself was snappy, so games were playable. And I'm not just talking about games like League of Legends, which can run on a Lego set. I'm talking about modern AAA games like Cyberpunk. It was enjoyable. I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything, and I think this would be a good computer to recommend. If I didn't know what I was missing out on, the human-built $600 computer was just miles ahead in every single category. And I don't just mean gaming, but that part is definitely the most clear. Every game we tested was noticeably faster than the AI recommended one, and this is at the same settings. And we also have way more breathing room to upgrade the graphics whenever we want. And I don't say this to highlight my personal build skills. I say this to just show the limitations that ChatGPT has, even though the potential is there. So what went wrong? Well, firstly, the total price of ChatGPT's computer was just wrong. And I really don't know how this happened, but the total sum of all of the computer parts it recommended was actually $524, but it said it was $574. So it just added $50 there, which is pretty ironic because when I asked it to build me a $500 computer, it said, save up more money, but in a very nice and kind way, of course. The RAM and SSD prices are also much higher than market price, but it could just be using old data and prices change all the time. Secondly, 8 gigs of RAM and a 240 gig SSD are a little low in a $600 computer, to put it kindly. And there are also way better $100 CPUs on the market right now, like the Ryzen 4100, 4500, 5500, just to name a few. And this doesn't include that you get a higher quality power supply with the human generated computer versus the AI generated one. And that brings me to the first limitation in ChatGPT. It just doesn't use updated information. While the bot does know of newer components like the Ryzen 5600X or the 7600X, and it can recommend builds around those components, you have to specifically ask it to do so. Otherwise, it won't. I think the model is trained on older data sets, so it has way more confidence recommending older computer parts with, unfortunately, their original MSRPs, which are not updated. I mean, here's a really good example. Even the Ryzen 5 5600 build that it recommended still uses $299 as its price, when you can buy it for half the price right now at most retailers. And don't even think about asking for used components. It won't recommend any, and understandably so. That's just a whole nother can of worms. But its response is actually really good. It says that if you are looking at used components, then check out your local classifieds and vet the seller really well. All things that I wholeheartedly agree with, so good job there. The second limitation I found is it struggles with comparisons. So the 6600 XT from AMD is decidedly faster and decidedly cheaper than its RTX 3060 counterpart. Now, I understand there are moments where I would recommend the 3060. If I needed the ray tracing performance, if I really needed the CUDA cores for any kind of content creation, or if I needed NVENC. encoding for streaming, for instance. But 9 times out of 10, if you're primarily gaming, go for the 6600 XT. Unfortunately, ChatGPT seems to feel differently about that. So it says the 3060 has more CUDA cores than the 6600 XT, but the 6600 XT doesn't use CUDA cores. But maybe it's comparing GPU cores. But even then, you can't really do that because they're two completely different architectures. So it's not an apples to apples comparison, unfortunately. Thankfully, these two limitations aren't game-breaking because ChatGPT still recommends you a decent PC, albeit a slower one. But the next one can really pose a problem, especially to new builders, and that is compatibility. And if I'm being honest, I feel bad saying this. I don't know why I have feelings for a bot, but I do. ChatGPT just can't do it, but the potential is there. If you ask ChatGPT if your build is compatible, and it is compatible, then it will answer correctly. Yes, perfect. And it actually explains why it's compatible. Now, if your CPU and your motherboard are not compatible, so they're different sockets, ChatGPT will also answer that correctly. No, and it will tell you why these are incompatible. I asked ChatGPT if a 3090 Ti, a 450 watt video card, will work with a Raid Max 400 watt power supply, a Tier F power supply. And ChatGPT's response was, it looks like this PC is compatible and should work as intended. I don't need to explain why that's incorrect. In a more realistic example, I added 4 memory sticks to my build when my motherboard only supports 2. And ChatGPT said everything looks fine. I see no problem here. So obviously the compatibility checking isn't foolproof right now. And I think the problem is that ChatGPT just checks the components against the motherboard to see if it will work. So the 3090 Ti fits in the PCIe slot, or the DDR4 memory is compatible with the DDR4 slot on the motherboard. But it doesn't check every single component against each other, which you really have to do to ensure everything works. So to answer the initial question, is ChatGPT good for build requests, recommendations, and would I start pointing people towards the bot instead of pointing them towards guides or trying to help them myself? Probably not. I do think ChatGPT's build recommendations is a good starting point, but I don't think that should be your final submission per se. And I don't blame the bot, nor do I blame the devs. I think ChatGPT is a great tool with a ton of potential. And it's really hard to get PC compatibility and recommendations correct. There's just so much data. You have to account for compatibility, of course, price, and performance. And price changes all the time. Performance, you have to choose what metric you're going to use, and performance can change widely depending on the game or the piece of software. So it's just difficult, but if they can figure it out, it would be phenomenal. Like, awesome. Recommended all the time, and it will teach people the why behind it as well. But one thing that ChatGPT cannot do is keep your online presence secure. Again, I've tried. One simple way to do this is with a good password manager, and Nordpass is here to help. If my Google account got hacked, I could have my identity stolen, lose access to important parts of my business, or even scarier, have those crypto scams live streamed on my channel. It made me realize that my online security really isn't the best. So I tried out Nordpass. I've been using it for a few weeks and I really do enjoy it. Nordpass securely stores all of your passwords in one place, and it syncs across up to 6 devices. They also auto-generate very strong passwords for you, and you only have to remember them through one master password. It also securely stores your credit cards if you want online shopping to be quicker, and it has the autofill feature so you don't have to type in your passwords every single time. But personally, I think their best feature is their password health checker and their data breach checker. Nordpass notifies you when your data has been breached, your passwords are too old or they're too weak, or you've reused them way too many times. and it helps you resolve it as well. And it's been phenomenal for me these past few weeks getting everything back in order. It's a simple password manager and I don't have to think much at all when I use it. And honestly, the less thinking that I have to do, the better. With our special deal, you can get 2 years of Nordpass with 1 month free on a personal account. That's exactly what I did. Just go to nordpass.com/OzTalksNord, OzTalksNord, or use OzTalksNord at checkout. And if you own a business, you can get a freebie as well. Business accounts can get a free 3-month trial of Nordpass. Just make sure you register with a business domain. Go to nordpass.com/OzTalksBusiness with code OzTalksBusiness in the form. So yeah, ChatGPT has a ton of potential. I mean, Microsoft just dropped like $10 billion to be a major stakeholder in the company. So hopefully it can only go up from here. Hopefully. With all that being said, what do you guys think of ChatGPT? Have you used it to build your own computers? Do you think that it has potential to actually be a replacement for YouTubers like me? Which is a little bit morbid to think about, but hey, if there's something better, that's just competition, shows that I need to up my game. Before I get any more existential with my online presence, I will talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.